Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I've gotten in the following habit. I've written a lot of books, and I take a walk with my dog every morning to a cafe that's about 1.5 miles away, and I carry a few of my books in a little plastic bag, and I pass a little library, one of those little boxes that people put in front of their houses, and I like to keep one or two of my books in there as a little donation to the community. But I also occasionally will look and see if there's a book I want to take out. And I saw this today. Speak Like Churchill, Stand Like Lincoln. And, I always recommend to my career counseling clients, build on your strengths. And I've done a lot of public speaking, and I like it. And I thought I would see what this book had. And in an experiment, I found this book teaching me a hell of a lot. So I have actually read it all in a few hours today between clients, and have marked up excerpts that I thought might be of particular value to you. So I'm going to read those. At age 26, Benito Juarez ran for the Mexican legislature. When the homely little Indian rose to talk, most of his audience were disdainful of him. But Juarez contrived his own kind of presence. He did not speak immediately, but looked over the various faces in the audience and forced each condescending listener to meet his gaze. The murmuring of the crowd stilled to a hush as Juarez stood for almost a minute, staring his audience up and down, while silently repeating his opening lines. Because he knew that many of his listeners might think of his command of Spanish inadequate, he used a long pause to heighten their anticipation. Finally, after that long silence, Benito Juarez began. Libertad, dignidad, humanidad. His compelling words were heard loud and clear by his attentive audience. Adolf Hitler, whose eloquence was exceeded only by his evil, was a master of the power pause. Films show him fussing with his mustache, mopping his forehead, and fidgeting with his nose for 5 minutes as he faced thousands in Berlin Square. Then, after a long power pause that drew his audience's undivided attention, he would open, almost in a whisper. Wie want peace. Of course, that's bullshit, but anyway, the job here is to share public speaking techniques. Before you speak, try to lock your eyes on each of your would-be, soon-to-be listeners. Force yourself, before you begin your presentation, to say in your own mind each word of your opening sentence. Every second you wait will strengthen the impact of your opening words. Make your power pause your silent preparation before any presentation you make. Stand, stare, and command your audience, and they will bend their ears to listen. The prime time of any talk you give is during your opening words. Everyone in the audience is waiting to see what you look and sound like. Do not waste that psychological edge with trite blather. Go for the power opener. Churchill once said, "Opening amenities are opening inanities." By starting with something pleasant but unoriginal, you'll sound dim and dull. Yet 99% of all executives begin their remarks with something like this. "It's a pleasure to speak with you, Middletown's Kiwanis. I've always had great respect for your civic endeavors in the community." That's banal, boring, and blah. Now listen how the black leader Frederick Douglass opened an address in Ohio. "Pardon me. Why did you ever invite me? And the people I represent here have no reason to celebrate this day. Okay. Certainly not what Douglas's audience expected. One CEO said to me, "Jamie, don't I have to say something nice about the people who invited me?" "No," I told him. "At least not in the beginning, when the audience thinks that you're compelled to say it." Churchill once explained that praise in the beginning of a talk sounds like flattery, whereas the same praise wedged into the middle of a speech comes off as sincerity. He called this delayed appreciation parenthetical praise. I once heard a woman interject such praise in the middle of her civic talk. And speaking of leadership, no one exemplifies it more than Mayor Flattery, who, we have never seen a photograph of Roosevelt in a wheelchair during his presidency. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who understood power presence, never allowed a camera to photograph him in his crippled state. When Roosevelt was about to deliver his speech on behalf of Governor Alfred Smith for the Democratic presidential nomination, he arrived at an empty Madison Square Garden early enough to position himself in a chair behind the lectern. 4 years before, Democratic Party delegates had witnessed a healthy and robust Roosevelt, whom they chose to be the vice presidential nominee. There was no way Roosevelt was going to let them see him enter in a wheelchair. When the time came for him to speak, he propelled himself in a leap and grabbed the lectern. During the applause that greeted him, a gasping Roosevelt had time to collect himself from the draining effort. That power presence was all important for Roosevelt. Avoid experimenting with a signature style in the way Hillary Clinton trotted out new hairdos. Keep your style simple but the same. Think of Barbara Bush and her hallmark white pearls that complemented her white hair. Then adopt a style that suits you, and the people will then identify that with you. In the last month of the Eisenhower administration, I was recruited to write a short talk for the president. I was called to the Oval Office, whereas Eisenhower sat at his desk. He dropped his glasses onto the desk and barked, "What's your QED?" QED, Mr. President? "Yes, QED." "What's the bottom line?" In one sentence. QED stands for Quod Erat Demonstranda. In one sentence. What do you want the audience to do when my speech is over? If you don't know that before you start to write the talk, you're wasting your gosh darn time, and my time. For any talk or presentation, you must figure out the PowerPoint first, whether you're going to a breakfast meeting, making a sales talk, or delivering some kind of presentation. You need to first come up with the key message you want to leave with your audience. Usually an action step, some action you want them to take. Leadership sometimes means surprising your audience. If they're settling into their seats anticipating a 20 or 30-minute speech, astonish them by speaking for only 5 minutes. That is a power brief. Terse is far better than tedious. Being short-winded comes off far better than being long-winded. What's the greatest speech ever delivered? Many say the Gettysburg Address. How long was it? 2 minutes. Franklin Roosevelt was Hubert Humphrey's hero. Humphrey emulated Roosevelt's principles, but unfortunately not his speech habits. Humphrey's long-winded talks earned him the nickname of Hubert Horatio Hornblower in some circles. Once Humphrey rose to speak, he didn't like to sit down. His brilliance, when heard too long, became boring. His wife Muriel once told him this: "Hubert, to be immortal, you don't have to be eternal." JFK marshaled the axioms of the great and arrayed them as artillery. In one October week, Kennedy paraded the wisdom of Robert Frost and Socrates, Dante and Franklin Roosevelt, Charles Dickens and Rudyard Kipling. Kennedy cited more quotations in 1 year than the combined total of all previous presidential candidates in history. Actually, the quotes came not from Kennedy's own readings, but from the files of Ted Sorensen, Kennedy's alter ego and chief speechwriter. Quotations can help. But use only one quotation per talk and dramatize it, stage it, perform it, act it out. Put power into your quotation. He gives examples, one of which is from Aldous Huxley: dream in a pragmatic way. Statistics can be powerful, and they're cited precisely and upfront to obtain immediate credibility. Other statistics are framed more roundly to be remembered by the audience. Eisenhower said, "To understand the billion-dollar deficit, imagine taking all the $1 bills in a billion and laying them out end to end. It would go more than to the moon and back again." A statistic made come alive. Winston Churchill never used visuals. Franklin Roosevelt never put up flowcharts. Ronald Reagan never employed overheads. Leaders know they can't turn their voice over to visuals. Yet why do so many speakers make the mistake of demeaning themselves by deferring to their visual aids? Fear. The fear of getting up in front of an audience makes even top executives want to avoid the limelight. Too many speakers show slides as a substitute for speaking. They don't have to deliver a talk, they just have to introduce each slide. And slides are like drugs. Speakers are in danger of becoming over-dependent on them. Any talk or presentation should be the oral presentation of your personality, experiences, and ideas. Emphasize oral projection, not mechanical projection. No inanimate screen can match a flesh and blood presentation. Try telling a real-life story to flesh out your concept. If, for example, you want to make the point that your company must anticipate and be responsive to change, you want to stop. You know what? I'm going to tell you a more personal story, and then I want to bring this to an end, lest this be too long. The story I always like to tell, and I've told a million times, including on many of these videos, is that of my father. But here I'm just going to tell the very end, the punchline, and try to demonstrate the way I think it should be told. When I was around 13, I stopped being quite so self-absorbed. And I asked my dad, Daddy, how come you so rarely talk about the Holocaust? And he stiffened, which is something he rarely did. And he said, Martin, the Nazis took 5 years from my life. I won't give them 1 minute more. Martin, never look back. Always take the next step forward. And that's how I think I want to end this. There's obviously a lot more in this very fine book called Speak Like Churchill, Stand Like Lincoln, subtitled 21 Powerful Secrets of History's Greatest Speakers. That was compelling enough for me to just grab it right out of that little library near my house. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. And certainly would welcome you taking a look at any of my 32 books. Probably the one most relevant to this is How to Do Life. It has got some sections on speaking and communication and confidence and all the rest of it. But all 32 are on Amazon. Just go there, search on my name, Marty Nemko, Nemko, and you will find more than you can stomach. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.